Aenig by Kaylee. Chapter 8. Aisha had become accustomed to the routine of Damien's visits over her 4 years in the city. He'd show up, agitated and huffy, complain to her about something or other, mostly about Kale, and then he would ask her about her day, and they would engage in idle chit-chat for a few hours until either a civilian came calling for her or some crisis occurred which would pull the first away from her clinic. Also usually Kale. But she liked that the oldest first sought out her company. Whatever the reason, she felt that they had become close. Now if only she could build up the courage to get them closer. "Sorry, am I bothering you?" The gentle question pulled her from her staring. Good thing she hadn't been looking anywhere indecent, like his pecs or arms or... Oh yes, she needed to answer the question. "I think he just needs some space," she responded on autopilot, with her regular conclusion to the soldier's rants. She flipped her hair over her shoulder and crinkled her nose. "I know it's hard to come by in this place, but it's all I can offer. Not really my field." Damien sighed, his head in his hands, and she had to hide a smile at how the man engulfed the small bed her civilian patients usually sat on. "When I give him space, he misbehaves," the soldier lamented. "When I'm on his case, he misbehaves. God, it's like I'm dealing with a child." "Kale is a special case," the woman smiled, overthinking the action of placing a comforting hand on the scout's shoulder for all of 10 seconds before doing it anyway. Despite his outbursts and general compulsion to annoy everyone in the city, he can be very sweet. "Yeah, when he wants something," Damien grumbled. "I think, from you at least, he's earned the benefit of the doubt," she reminded the man gently. "I don't want to talk about this anymore." Aisha sighed but let the topic drop. Damien would bring it up again soon enough. This afternoon was not that time. "How has your day been?" he asked. Now this was something she had been meaning to share. It was kind of important, but Aisha had never been one to enjoy admitting that there was something she couldn't do. "Amara came to me yesterday," she began, and Damien seemed to instantly pick up on the hesitation in her tone, because he looked up from his hands to give her his full attention. It was intimidating and slightly thrilling to have all that intensity focused on her. "I suspected when you brought her in, but I needed time to be sure." The designated doctor crossed her arms over her chest and sighed. "I'm not even sure it's a problem, per se," she continued, off point, shifting uncomfortably. "I mean, I know there will be some issues because we're nowhere near equipped to handle..." "What's wrong with her?" Damien asked, bringing her back from the discussion she'd been having internally for the last 20-something hours. The look on his face assured her that she'd unintentionally, yet successfully, convinced him that the poor woman was a carrier of Ebola, or worse. "She's pregnant, Damien." The man had much the same expression she herself had had when the results had come back positive. Dumbfounded. "Like, ready to pop in a few weeks pregnant," Aisha continued, as the pressure of the imminent built up inside her. She had been meaning to tell someone, but it had simply never been the right time. "Are you sure?" the scout asked. "Of course I'm not sure," the woman snapped. "I had to dig a pea stick out of a bag that hasn't been touched in 2 years, because every time we find a supermarket with something still inside, we take the condoms and nothing else. I'm freaking out. I don't know how to deliver a baby. And you know that these things always come in groups, like survivor strikes and suicides. I promise you, once everyone finds out that there's been a baby, there will be more." She paced anxiously as she let all her worries flow. Damien could be just as good a listener as he was a talker. "How has this not come up before?" she questioned, her hands anxiously going into her hair. The subject had been running rampant in her head since she'd discovered the tentative truth of her suspicion. But then this had come to light. "Since the city started moving, not once has anyone come to me with this. I know people are screwing like bunny rabbits. Trix's tent is next to mine, and I couldn't sleep last night because she and Darren were going at it. Oh my God, what if the baby's an O? I don't think I could kill a baby. How the hell am I supposed to do this?" "Aisha!" It wasn't a shout. Not really. It just sounded loud as her body was jerked to a halt, rough hands having grabbed her shoulders to stop her erratic pacing. Damien leaned down to eye level and stared at her calmly. "Relax," he said, the smooth bass of his voice calming to the woman's frayed nerves. Hell, she wasn't even a real doctor. She'd barely been 3 years into her degree when the outbreak hit. If nothing else, she was more or less certain that if the world ever had to go back to normal, she'd have her pracs sorted. "Aisha, breathe," the soldier insisted gently. He encouraged her to take a deep breath, hold it, and let it out really slowly. They did it again, and the corners of his mouth turned up in a reassuring smile. "We'll get through this like we get through everything else." His words helped to take the edge off, but that still didn't change the fact that the woman still felt she was completely out of her depth. "There is a man here in the city. His name is Gallus," the commander began once Aisha had calmed down to a mild panic. "He works in farming," she nodded slowly, not seeing where the man was going with this. "What about him?" "Now he does," Damien continued softly, gently leading the woman to the bed so they could sit. "But he used to breed horses before the outbreak. Maybe he could help." "I'm sure he had a vet for those kinds of things." Aisha shook her head. "It's not going to kill you to ask for help, you know," he chuckled awkwardly. "And as for this wave you're so scared of, the city was built to hold 500 people. Would it really be so bad if a few were born into it?" Aisha had to think about that one. They didn't have the resources to keep babies. "They'll all need to be breastfed, and we won't be able to care for them if they get sick." "If people are willing to have children regardless, who are we to deny them?" Damien asked, his eyes slightly dreamy. "Children bring hope. It shows that we're stable enough to start moving on from this. We're healing. Or you could botch the birth and prove to everyone you don't have the skill to bring forth life." Cale added in his 2 cents worth from the door. The two sprung apart in embarrassment at being caught discussing such a secret. The excuse on her lips died along with Damien's defensive reprimand at the sight of the man leaning against the post, covered in blood and looking, for all intents and purposes, like he'd stopped by to ask them to tea, only he was visibly shaking, and his eyes were wide and wild. "Cale, are you all right? What happened?" They both spoke at the same time. Cale chuckled, subconsciously bouncing on the balls of his feet. "I'm fine. You should see the other guy." Damien's mood turned angry as Aisha pulled the scout into the clinic and propped him onto the bed. "No, seriously, Damien," Cale defended himself. "You should see the other guy." They looked up as Silas half carried a trembling Trisha through the door. Aisha instantly ran to the woman and began looking her over. If Cale said he was fine, he usually was, but the doc had never seen the seasoned forager so shaken up. "Trisha?" she asked kindly, slipping into doctor mode, welcoming a problem she'd dealt with 100 times and would know how to fix. "Trisha, where does it hurt?" "It came out of the ground," the woman stammered, her eyes unfocused and far away. She was in shock. "I've never seen anything like it." Aisha and Damien both looked confusedly between Silas and Cale for an explanation. The younger scout spoke up first. "She was fine until we got back into the bay," he offered up worriedly. Doc turned her attention back to her patient and cupped the woman's face in her hands. "What did you see?" she asked softly, hopeful to keep Trisha talking as she felt her pulse. It fluttered against her fingertips, like an underground EDM rave. "Oh my God," she heard Damien gasp, and she looked up just in time to see Maish and Yana bringing in a memph bigger than the commander. "What the hell is that thing?" The soldier paled at the sight. "Never mind what it is," Aisha shrieked. "Why the hell is it in my med?" "We were actually hoping you could tell us," Yana huffed, dropping her side of the beast. "It's Marcus' day off. I think Trisha takes precedence," Doc hissed curtly, and made a hasty shooing motion at the decapitated corpse. "What am I supposed to do with that?" "Told you so," Cale quipped, crossing his legs to swing them innocently from his spot on the bed. "Shut up," Yana shot back. Get it out of my office! Aisha demanded, when all three scouts left it and stepped forward. We will, Doc, Maish promised, stepping in to defuse the situation. As soon as we're all cleared. We can't go past the field if it's contagious. You should have thought of that before you brought it all the way up here, Doc all but growled, and pointed at the bed demandingly. We aren't that stupid, Yana huffed irritably. We took a jet down to get it, Silas offered weakly. Doc was in no mood. All of you, sit now! They scrambled to do so, and were surprised when the woman rounded on Damien. What are you still doing here? Go get someone on cleanup before someone sees it and we have a full-on riot on our hands. Hi, Doc. Have you seen Dill? Oopsie. Kale chuckled, and Yana smacked him in the arm to shut up. Ndi had frozen in the doorway, her eyes wide and mouth open in shock at the sight of the creature between her and the multitude of people crammed into the tiny clinic. What is that? That appears to be the question of the day, Cale drawled from his seat on the bed, patiently waiting for his turn to be examined. Doc, think you could sew his mouth shut? Ndi threw back offhandedly as she approached the corpse, with far less fear than was rightly regular. Only been here a few months and she already doesn't like you, Yana snickered. That's got to be a record. Nobody asked you, Cale hissed, jumping up from his seat. This is taking too long. I need a shower. You're not going anywhere until Aisha gives you the clear, Damien retorted, watching the newest member of their population crouch over the dead Memph and start poking at it. Can I? The ebony girl started shyly, looking up to the commander for an answer with puppy dog eyes. Can I take this? Marcus isn't in the lab today, but he taught me how to work pretty much everything. I'm sure I could start testing today and he can help tomorrow or... Well, I mean... It really shouldn't be up here. People might get scared. She tried to cover her unconventional excitement weakly. Aisha watched Damien out of the corner of her eye as he tried to decide the best course of action. She could practically see the gears in his head turning. Yes, he finally settled upon, and the girl's face lit up, like she'd just heard it was Christmas and New Year, all in one afternoon. Just get it down to the labs quietly. I don't want to induce a panic. Trust Damien to give the newbie the opportunity to step up. I'll help, Cale insisted, walking over to heft the majority of its bulk over his shoulder. He gave Damien a look, which Aisha had nicknamed their silent understanding gaze, and knew that the soldier would bring the man to see her later for his checkup. She watched as Cale picked up the head in his free hand and tossed it to Ndi. The girl didn't even cringe when she caught it, and the dead flesh made a slapping sound against her palms. If you must, she sighed, before heading out of the clinic into the elevator. Cale followed close behind, grinning like he'd just got away with something. Aisha was sure Damien would go with them, and turned her attention back to Trisha. Now, Trisha, she smiled sweetly, as she clicked her fingers at one of the scouts to hand her a syringe. Honey, I need you to tell me, where does it hurt?